Got a video by Young Gerby, the goon addiction and the transgenderism connection. Hopefully we can unpack this and get to the bottom of what's actually going on.
Gerby is back. I don't know if you've seen the news recently or you pay attention to what the comings and goings of the kids these days, but there's this new thing going on where, let's say you're a guy, right? You're born a guy, you're born a little baby boy, you have the boy parts. Now what they're doing, and no one's even talking about this, but now what they're doing is you can flip the script on them. Change up the tune. Change up the whole vibe.
Yeah, you can. But I don't know if it's permanent. Hear me out. You got chemical and physical procedures. Puberty blockers, or HRT, hormone therapy, is temporarily changing your physiology, right? Because you're on this stuff forever. The second you start taking life-altering hormones, you need to continue to take them, because once you stop, if you're a man, you will start androgenizing again, which means you will start undergoing virilization, which means you'll grow hair, your voice will become deeper, and this is all given that you don't nuke your test into oblivion in the first place. But a lot of people pretend that these hormones are just magic pills. You take them and then you're good forever. The other option being physical, a little chop and tuck action. That's diabolical. You're paying tens and thousands of dollars to maybe feel better about your gender, because there are people that are D-trans and that physical change may not even be enough for them to actually feel validated. So it's a murky gray zone if these surgeries and gender swaps even help these people. Some cases, perhaps.
Using certain medical procedures, you can turn into a woman if you're this guy, or if you were a woman, you could turn into a guy. You could just totally, kind of like an RPG.
HRT often causes permanent damage even for dudes who have low T and take more. Yeah, that's right. But because it's considered medicine and gender-affirming care, it kind of softens the blow of what's actually going on. No, you're destroying your physiology.
Character selection screen, you could change your gender. They call them transgender because you're transitioning from the... Now, I don't hate these people. I harbor no...
Yeah, we see that based on the flags in the background.
Resentment in my heart towards these people. A lot of them seem pretty chill. They seem to be pretty good at using a digital audio workstation. In my observation...
What are genuine cases where HRT is medically required? Well, if you're hypogonadal, which means that your testes don't produce testosterone, it's probably in your best interest to visit a doctor and get on TRT. That's what it was initially designed for. However, it has been abused by bodybuilders and teenagers who want to hyper-optimize their life and become chads and essentially speed run life. Because instant gratification feels a lot better for these people than actually working for something and having the fruits of your labor pay off exponentially as you age.
Observation. Don't know what it is. I'm listening to Spotify, some mix. I hear a new song. I'm like, wow, did a chick really cook this up in Ableton? And I just investigate a little further, and there's always more to the story. By the way.
That's actually a funny observation. He's talking about, say, hyperpop or certain internet music being influenced by trans artists, and that does seem to be the case. But as we get deeper into this video, maybe we can substantiate why that is. because there seems to be an overlap of neurodivergency and being transgender. Is it one-to-one? No, of course not. But perhaps more creative, open types are more susceptible to trans ideology or gender dysphoria than, say, a conservative man would be.
I have no hatred for these people, but I have noticed a strange and sinister pattern emerge. I have eyes, I have ears, I have observed something. A connection, possibly a strong correlation between gooning and transitioning. Upon noticing this connection,
I don't even know how you noticed that connection. What forums are you on?
I've seen it to be pretty strong. Enough for me to put forward that what is known as gender dysphoria is something, a neurosis.
Which it used to be defined as gender dysphoria. I'm pretty sure now that's not a thing. Not that these vernacular vocabulary definitions truly matter. It's semantics, but perhaps the Overton window has shifted in such a way where this has become more acceptable to the masses. Which then begs the question, can this behavior be influenced? And I would say, yes, it can.
That is developed and crystallized in people with a pornography addiction. These two things are strongly correlated. Now, something to note is that there are a lot more, I think multiple times more, way more male to female trans people than there are female to male.
That is also unequivocally a fact. How many female to male trans people have you ever heard of, let alone seen? Not many at all. Now, I've unpacked this multiple times, but I'll do it again. In psychology, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a nematode in my basement. You have the ocean traits, right? OCEAN. Known as the Big Five. Openness, neuroticism, conscientiousness, extroversion, and agreeableness. Now, if you were to chart a standard distribution, meaning most men, most women fall under certain distributions of those 5 attributes, you can draw some certain conclusions, such that men are more susceptible to doing risky behavior. They're also more susceptible to committing self-deletion. So if you look at the numbers of self-deletion amongst this group, it's incredibly high. It's also very high among autistic people and men. So you have this Venn diagram overlap where these masculine or men adjacent behaviors seem to manifest. It's not causation equals correlation, but there is something going on there.
And in this case, I'm mostly talking about the former. It might apply both ways, but I have experience, like I know people, I see a lot more male to female. And also I've spent a good chunk of my teen years on the old hub where men like to beat off. I've never really sat down and read one of these female goon smut novels. I would probably rather shin kick a fire hydrant.
If you want my unfiltered, uncut, raw opinion, which may be controversial, but what am I gonna self-preserve and self-filter? No, that's what you guys come here for. I think a lot of men, and this is not everyone, cannot handle the responsibilities and the bleak nature of being a man. Because there's obviously certain things about manhood versus womanhood that are unique to each, right? I will never know what it's like to be a woman and give birth. I'll never know certain aspects about the feminine because they're innate, they're biological, just as women will not know the certain structures and faculties of what it means to be a man. And manhood, in many ways, and this is not being idyllic, is dark. You kind of have to shoulder responsibility, and you're expected to provide throughout your life in various different aspects, and it's sort of thankless in many ways. That's why a lot of men just want to be heard and appreciated. And there's something about that masculine path that causes people to self-destruct. And sometimes it could actually mean flip the script. I don't want to say I'm cooking yet, but I'm definitely sauteing.
The way they interact with adult content is quite different. So I'm
Being sick is kind of soy, Phil. B, thank you for the 20. I appreciate you. Listen, my power levels are rising. I'm getting over it. And I'm excited for the new heights that we're going to reach here at Third Eye Global.
mostly talking about male to female.
They can't handle the heat, so they exit the kitchen. I think some do. Not all.
Trans people, which are the majority. Now, don't be obtuse and misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying every guy that beat.
The fact that there are more M to F versus F to M means there's some internal factor that someone can control. B with another 20. Sorry, my bad for interrupting the gospel. It's okay, B. I appreciate the other 20.
It's off is going on to
Sickness is growth. That's just pain leaving my body. My immune system's getting stronger day by day.
start flipping the script on them. What I am saying is that if you're really about that goon life, it's one of several paths that you can take. One of them is the femboy road.
That's true. So this is going to get really deranged, but I think we should talk about it. There are certain men who cannot attract women. We would call these incels, involuntarily celibate, right? Or perhaps they're fed up with the opposite sex. Well, you have a couple options, right? One of those options is that you can become the opposite sex. Then you can get attention and validation and goon points because you are now fulfilling a market need of a particular fetish. You are now a femboy. Not that I'm Socrates over here, but once again, I'm spitting.
Other examples of roads: the cuck road, the furry road, the pedophile road, the anime road. Some of these roads,
All these different skill points, skill trees.
are worse than others. I'm
Many such cases.
not equivocating them all. There are levels to this goon shit. You have to understand. There's a goon hierarchy. And Nietzsche talked about this, it's like the dragon is the serpent, the dragon of chaos. And it goes to the top of the dominance hierarchy.
Oh, listen here, bucko. Sometimes slaying the dragon means, well, just that. Slaying your own dragon, chopping it off. The serpent in the garden. Imagine that. Now all you're left is a bloody stump. Oh, it's a postmodern horror. I would never slay that dragon. No, it's metaphorical.
And only the real gooners. At the bottom of the goon hierarchy, you have just basic beaters. The basic beaters.
Basic beaters.
They might whack off every once in a while, a few times a week, once a week, something like that. They're just on Instagram. They see something that gets them going, some reels, some still image of some model or some OnlyFans girl doing a little dance to promote her OnlyFans, but they don't actually sign up to OnlyFans. They just beat off to the little TikTok. You know what I'm saying? You keep going up the pyramid in frequency and intensity and perversity of the content consumed. So you got.
Yeah, I think being a turbo gooner is actually it's a spiritual death spiral.
Oh, you got guys that go on the hub and they're just looking at the homepage. They find one they like. Then you got guys, they're doing it more often. They're looking for specific things. You got the Hinte, the manhwa type fellas. They're into the.
This shit is actually a cancer. If you think about it, there's nothing good that comes out of adult content, goon material. It's dark.
The drawings, because they can be more cartoonish and hyperbolistic in the features and the act and everything. You got guys looking for specific stuff. Then you got the real gooners. Because gooning, as I've found out, I used to just use it interchangeably with whacking off.
It's not actually what that means. Pretty much means getting yourself to a point of ecstasy.
Gooning technically, and Nietzsche talked about this, gooning is closer to edging, if we're going to use the term technically. So it's whacking, it's going off to the edge, but you're not finishing. You know, the basic beaters, they just whack off for a few minutes, they're done. Boom bap. The real gooners, and this is how you really fry your brain, where you extend it for long periods of time and you're gooning. This is how you really open the portal to the lower realms of clip hop. What I am positing is that if you go up a few rungs on the goonarchy, you look at this group of guys that are there. Transgenderism is probably proportionally overrepresented in this group by a factor of 20 to 25 times as much, in my estimations and calculations. Now,
I mean, that checks out. I don't even need a source. I just believe, bro.
There's no extensive research about this because research requires funding. And this would be a politically abrasive and risky thesis to test. This is just an inference. If you want to see the brain scans on pornography addiction, I've made a bunch of videos on this, but you could just go to yourbrainonporn.com. I might throw up screenshots of studies or some sources.
Put holes in your brain?
If I care enough to. I'm probably talking to my echo chamber anyways. This is not like an academic channel. This is my rant channel. So we'll see, whatever. There's no studies about it, but there's studies that could point to it and infer. You can draw inferences from them. In my mind, this connection is clear. I see it plain as day. So the question to ask is why? Here's an email I got. Horrific corn addiction led me to meeting a transgender for sex.
Well, we gotta take this with a grain of salt here. I don't know how true this is, but perhaps it can lead to an elucidation of a forethought.
Well, you've piqued my interest with this one. I'll tell you that much. The crazy part is, in the duration of me having these channels, I've probably seen this scenario through confessions, emails, DMs, all of it, several times. Guys have sent me this, trying to confide in me this scenario. And they can't, I believe them, but that's just a little nitpick. I'm going to have to leave the internet. It's really damaging. Anyways.
Chat, do you think I've inflicted psychological damage by being on the internet and subjecting myself to this? I think I have. But it's also keeping me sharp and on my toes.
Here's the email. Ever since I was 11, I've been beating my meat hardcore.
That's young. But it's not uncommon.
True. You know, the usual. When I was around 16, I did nofap successfully for about half a year. Then life happened, stress happened, and I started whacking it again. This went on for a while, and I started having to...
You see, I used to think nofap was just cope because it's inherently goofy where you have a bunch of guys with daddy issues and they want to get rich and famous and muscular and bang Stacy's. So they're like, don't beat your dick, and then it's your masculine life force. I swear to God, that's like an actual genre of content on the internet. But as you get older, right, You start thinking about things differently, or at least I do. It's a bit more spiritual. Do you want to be a digital cuck? Do you want to watch other men pleasure actual prostitutes? And then it's not even pleasurable for them. No one involved. Like, imagine the smell. And then there's people making money off of it and distributing it and literally psyoping boys and men and women and girls. It's gross. Biologically, gooning raises prolactin, and it's not a good hormone to raise over and over again. You'll feel aloof, lazy, not sharp, not locked in, blunt. That's why you should never goon.
Masturbate to weird stuff just so I could nut. Nothing immoral, just weird. One of these being transgender she-male. In parentheses, right wing to femboy pipeline is real. See, emails like this, it's just, I like seeing these. I need more of these because there's just so much to think about here. Wow.
There's nothing attractive about gooning, bro. All your ancestors are watching over you with the faint glow of blue light zapping your brain as you're just straight jorking it. It's actually gay. You're looking at wieners on your phone. That's wild.
This should be studied. Nietzsche talked about this. Anyway, so I was probably jerking it.
Like you're a voyeur. That's voyeuristic. You are a cuck in the comfort of your own home.
This stuff for about a year until one day I decided it would be fun to meet one of them in real life. After my gay mate showed me how easy it is to get sex on Grindr. So long story short, please keep it short. I find this relatively attractive transgender. Message her. And within 20 minutes, I'm in her hotel room. It's that easy, folks. We start, okay, you know what? At second thought, I'm not going to read this shit. Oh, get me off, dude. I know, man. I'm not going to read it. You get it, okay? You get the gist. It's a tale as old as time, really. Our parents used to read us stories like this, ghost stories, fairy tales before we went to bed. And Nietzsche talked about this, but a famous...
Also, you're touching a Johnson. Think about that. While potentially looking at another one, that's... You're in the belly of the beast now, bucko.
Example you could bring up is Chris Tyson of Mr. Beast fame. This man was a well-documented, high-level goon warlock. But then all the...
That's true. He actually was. He was a dark sorcerer of the goon.
Sudden, out of the blue, he did the maneuver.
Yeah, he hit him with the switch up.
He flipped the script on him. Now he's a shouty. Many such cases. What this exhibits is the addiction cycle, sensitization and desensitization. So you start whacking up, you climb the hierarchy, and
you climb out of bronze in the ranked gooner lobby.
Content you pursue as your brain becomes desensitized and fried, especially if you're gooning and not basic beating, you need to pursue more and more novel content. So there's a whole branching web of different fetishes and things you need.
That's why there's so many different subcategories. Not that I would know, but you know, there's some freaks out there, and they're into some absolutely wild shit. And the more perverse it gets, I would imagine the darker the psyche, the greater the shadow.
To get into in order to get off. And I've seen it many times.
Chris Tyson was over there activating his trap card, actually, though.
Whether it be my experience on these channels, getting confessions and emails with famous people. I've even had a little brush of it with people I know. Also seen, I just remembered this clip. This would go well here. So the comedian Matt McCusker. This is a Joe Rogan clip. Let's see here.
No, it's not,
It's weak, dude.
You got
It's
nice
weak.
willpower.
But
you quit
getting there.
selling drugs and you quit watching porn. You have good willpower. You have great willpower.
That took a while. And also
Yeah,
took
but
some bad events.
Yeah, but you did quit. That's
True.
what willpower is about.
Having a porn addiction has got to be the gayest thing ever. I understand that the call of the void is strong. But it's just cartoonish.
Oh,
True.
Also, he's discussed what type of porn he's into.
what kind?
I was just
no.
into everything, brother. I went down some dark alleys.
The
The tees,
darkest
brother.
alley?
The tees.
The
T1.
Kanye West speaks of this.
What's that? What are you talking about?
Tees.
What's the Terminator T1000?
Yeah.
He ran into some T1000s.
The boys and the girls. When the boys become girls.
When the boys become girls, and the boys.
Oh, the tees. That could be an issue.
He didn't like
Joe, I'll tell you, it is.
You know?
Talking about super normal stimuli.
We all get hit with our own unique debuffs. That's not a good one.
Dude, that's why I'm so passionate about that. It's like your
Exactly,
brain,
exactly.
you need like the edge. This was my problem with it. I'd go to like something a little.
See, caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol built flourishing societies. But all of the strongest men in the Bible were taken down by lust. You don't even have to be religious to believe in that. There's just didactic fiction that needs to be explained there.
little bit more kind of out there. And then you finally you land on those shores and you go, my God.
So that's what it is. It's desensitization, which causes your brain to seek novel stimulus. Now, in this case, he's talking about beating off to it. But first, you beat off to him, then you join him. That's what my
You
grand.
see, being a basic beater's fine, but it's really not, though. I'm not about half measures, bro. It's haram. It is.
Grandfather always said. I would put forth that, especially in the last 10 years, a majority of the
Matt McCusker did an entire podcast solo about how he shouldn't watch Adam 22 whore out his wife. Then he had him on in the podcast a few weeks later and praised him wholeheartedly. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak to that because I don't know the context beyond what you just said. But what I can probably infer is that a lot of podcast people just talk shit and then for the sake of upholding relationships, they just fold like lawn chairs. Yeah, one day you're a basic beater, the next you're a fucking femboy. So, you know.
male to female trans people, prior to transitioning, watched trans pornography and enjoyed it and utilized it. So that's the first reason why I think is desensitization and seeking novel stimuli, which can lead you down this path.
Now, boys, girls, men, women. I was raised in a Catholic school environment. I was told abstinence is the way, the truth, the life. Which maybe on paper has its place. But essentially what they were instilling in us is that you should never goon. And when I was going through it, I was like, yeah, right. But as a level 27 Giga Chad, I can tell you, they're kind of onto something.
Path. The second thing is trauma.
Like, imagine your wife walking in on you, beating your dick to porn. Are you okay? Do you not feel like an emasculated little, like, twink? That's a vulnerable position. No, think about that. Like, tactically speaking. You're hunched over, you're small, the world is instilling its world on you versus chest out. And, like, your meat stick is just like, no, dude, no. That's crazy.
People I know that have transitioned had
There's no way you're beating your meat when you have a partner. That's not true. A lot of men still do it. All the time.
a rough go of it in their childhood, in their home.
Marin is back with the gifted sub. Holy shit, I love to see that name. Marin, you better not leave us. I swear to God. I'm going to crash out.
Home life, something happened. You know, I do not have resentment for these people. I find it tragic more than anything. Certain traumas happening young or lack of certain figures could create gender dysphoria. And what needs to be understood about pornography
With another bunker buster banger hammer being dropped.
is that it's rape.
Wait, hold on. What?
Do not have resentment for these people. I find it tragic more than anything. Certain traumas happening young or lack of certain figures could create gender dysphoria. And what needs to be understood about pornography is that it's rape.
No, he's right. He's actually right. I mean, he's 100% true.
A lot of people might not be ready for this conversation, but it is what it is. Like,
Let's
you
unpack
start beating off when you're sometimes when you're prepubescent, when you're barely pubescent, when you're 11, 12 years old, to hardcore pornography that's readily available, shoved in your face, just 2 clicks away when you're curious.
it. Yeah, it's almost too easy to consume. Because, right, there's an age of consent for these types of activities. But this stuff is readily available for your virgin eyes as an actual child. Bro, I was 11, maybe 12. I remember it clear as day. I was in my friend's basement. And somebody turned on channel 94. Now, I don't know if you guys know what that means, but that was the adult channel. And yeah, there was a subscription to it. And I saw a full-grown woman getting pleasured and howling on a pool table. I didn't know what it was. I got hijacked.
And it's there, and there's nothing preventing you unless you had parents who really cracked down on it, or you didn't have access to the internet. When you get exposed to that stuff at that young an age, do not get it twisted. You've been raped. That's what it is. I'm not joking about it. Yeah. So this kind of stuff, you're exposed to it young, it can develop all sorts of problems, really. That's why it's sad, when people have a broken home life and then they're exposed to this stuff when they're very young, and it just turns into this, and they go down these paths. I mean, the whole experience and getting addicted to it.
Now, do you guys think there's a difference between, like, the boomer beaters that are like, oh, back in my day, it was just magazines. Those pages are sticking together. In communication theory, there's something called the medium is the message, meaning it entirely matters that one is in 4K Dolby Digital 60 FPS surround sound, and the other one is a two-dimensional vinyl vintage newspaper. It's a huge difference.
As you develop is traumatic, but there are also certain instances where you can be traumatized by things you see, and it could not be that bad.
And how easy it is to get access to it. Yeah, there's that whole point. You probably have to, like, get hand-me-downs from your creepy uncle or some shit. Versus me typing 120 words a minute at 8 years old and Googling boobs. As I sit there with my mouth just perpetually open.
It'd be bad. I mean, the way these things work is complicated, but I remember getting a little traumatized by just a video that was on YouTube. And I'm sure other people around my age bracket know this video and share this experience. Kind of born in the first half of the 2000s. It's like kind of an anime aesthetic. These kids are sneaking into this pool.
Phil's going Mormon? Nah, I'm not. There's a certain level of trad that is inherently disgusting to me as well. I have an aversion to it. I don't know. See, with everything in life, especially me, I aim to be a Renaissance man, to be good at many things and have an open mind, but also have certain lines and standards for myself and those close to me. Complete asceticism is cope and cringe. It hits both those boxes, right? I'm never going to drink again. You have zero vices. Even I can recognize that, glass of red wine or maybe a beer after a hard day's work, that shit will hit different. It's just I'm using certain self-regulation tools at different phases of my life to, one, prove to myself that I can do it, two, to see where it takes me. And I think that's helpful.
Pool. It has this like aquatic, haunting sort of electronic song, and they sneak into the pool and then things go awry. Let's just put it that way. And I saw that when I was very young, and it was just like so gross and fucked up, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah, really, it messed me up, man. So you have desensitization, you have trauma. The next thing I would say, the third reason there is this connection between adult content and transitioning.
Do you think there's another streamer on the platforms, YouTube, Twitch, and Kick, that has uttered the word asceticism in the last 2 years? Probably not. I'm just saying, there's levels to this, and here at Third Eye Global, I mean, the IQ skill diff is just different, bro.
Is the general...
Some of you don't even know what asceticism is, but I got you. Asceticism is a practice of self-denial and abstinence from worldly pleasures. It's essentially going monk mode, okay? Often pursued for religious or spiritual reasons, but it can be used to basically describe self-denial or abstinence from certain behaviors, whether it be a vice or virtue.
Neuroticism that comes from chronic pornography usage. So I'm referring to things like increased amygdala volume, which would cause higher anxiety, higher fear, reduced gray matter in the reward circuitry, short-circuiting your dopamine pathways. As I've explained before, it's not so much that you're losing dopamine or you're running out of dopamine. It has to do with the pathways the dopamine takes.
But also, goon content is cheap dopamine. Class is in session. Listen up. Everything good in life is delayed gratification, and it's earned dopamine. It's bliss that you feel after a sense of accomplishment. It's perhaps looking at a sunset with a loved one. Pavlovian or operant... Which one is it? Because this is important. I can't be messing up my definitions here. Pavlovian conditioning involves learning through association, where a neutral stimulus becomes associated with an unconditioned stimulus to elicit a conditioned response. Operant conditioning, on the other hand, focuses on how consequences shape voluntary behaviors, with rewards increasing the likelihood of behavior and punishments decreasing it. Associate and involuntarily respond to a stimulus. Okay, so if a dog gets fed food and you blow the whistle, the dog will eventually start to salivate the moment you blow the whistle, even if the food's not there. I believe this is classical Pavlovian conditioning, whereas every time you feel the call of the void, the goon, you reward yourself with a quick, cheap hit of dopamine, which is blasting ropes. Eventually, you're frying that circuitry. It's cheap. You did nothing to earn it.
So it favors one pathway over the other. There's the mesolimbic and the mesocortical. One is much faster. Immediate gratification, whatever. I've talked about this before. The general neuroticism that comes from this addiction, it leads to anxiety. It leads to depression, lack of motivation. It leaves you vulnerable. Vulnerable to anything. And you'll seek answers. You'll seek ways to fix it. You know, these people are struggling. They have a high rate of self-harm. This may have been true before and after the transition. And they're left vulnerable. They might seek psychotherapy. And you can go down a rabbit hole, taking all these drugs, you know. You know what I'm saying, the works. So those are the three main reasons I could think of right now. Desensitization, trauma, and the general other associated brain changes of pornography addiction.
I think gooning is 100% a certain pathway for some trans people. There's not going to be any research on that, but I looked at the science and it all checks out. Dr. Az Hakim, who's a leading clinical psychologist on the matter, / psychotherapist, he's actually both, which is quite rare, has a book called D-Trans. This is posted by Battle of Ideas. He elucidates 4 different main types of trans people, right? You got transvestites, which nobody talks about anymore, which can be divided into fetishistic versus non-fetishistic, which we will unpack. True trans, which is very low. Those are people that are actually gender dysphoric and have some sort of dysphoria afflicting them. Rapid onset trans, which is more of a social contagion that is influenced, which is 100% happening. And the last would be autogynephiles, which is a deep cut fetish in itself where you get sexual gratification with women body parts. It would explain why there's more male to female, right? And he also observes, you can watch this for yourself, maybe we'll watch a little bit of it here, that of the true trans subdivision of transgenders, a lot of them, or most of them in his case, are neurodivergent. They're on the spectrum. They have autism or something of that nature. Because what you notice is that when you misgender someone, or you see it on social media, they freak out, which is known as an autistic meltdown, or at least can be likened to that. Because autistic people, and this is not me being mean, this is not me being blunt, this is actual stuff that you can look into and observe for yourself and research, struggle with theory of mind, and that's an actual term, where it describes the cognitive ability to understand that others have their own unique thoughts, beliefs, desires, and perspectives which may differ from one's own. Like the capacity to attribute mental states to others, enabling us to predict and explain their actions, and understand that these mental states can be cause of their behavior. So if you have somebody who's autistic, who doesn't understand theory of mind, they can't put themselves in your shoes and understand that you can think of something that is entirely different from their lived experience. If you misgender that person, they might experience a meltdown. They freak out because to them, you are not affirming their reality where they actually think that they're in the wrong body or they're the sex that you don't think they are. And that misalignment is world-shattering to them. Now, this doesn't describe every single situation, but it is something to be observed.
there was then a realization that it wasn't everything they made out to be. So the ones who are really autistic didn't get that problem, because they were thinking, well, no, I've got long hair and a dress and the makeup, everyone knows I'm a woman. But the ones who weren't that autistic had the realization that maybe people aren't seeing me as a woman, or vice versa. And that would lead to the transgender dysphoria and the sense of inauthenticity of themselves again. So it was a circle. I did both individual and group therapy, because I was trained in individual psychotherapy, and I'm a group analyst. And what I found is that the group setting was far superior. In the one-to-one setting, the very dyadic, black and white, male, female, yes you are, no you're not, was the case. Whereas in a group, where everybody in the group was either a transsexual, a transvestite, an autogynephile, or a regretter, or detransitioner.
Nobody talks about transvestites, right? Which are essentially men just dressing like women. Now, of the two categories, you have fetishistic, non-fetishistic, and it is inherently different than autogynephilia, which is a very specific sexual fetish where you get gratification of having the female body parts as opposed to the clothing, right? There's stories of Bruce Jenner. Apparently on podcasts, this has been revealed, where Kris Jenner would walk in and see Bruce Jenner wearing women's clothing. Bruce Jenner was a decathlete, gold medalist in the Olympics, like the pinnacle of male athleticism at one point. You could probably make the argument that he may be transvestite, and he may or may not get gratification out of being that. Now, I don't know if he actually hit us with the switch up, the 1-2 buckle my shoe, you know what I mean, but that could be the case. Cross-dressers.
The analysis was by the patients. So in group analysis, it's analysis of the group by the group, including the individual, including the conductor. So it wasn't just smarty pants me saying this, that, and the other. It was each other. So they would say, "Hang on, you sound just like me, but you sound completely mad," and that was fine coming from them. And the post-operative regret or the detransition would say, "Look, you sounded just like."
Post-operative regret or detrans, those are people that have transitioned medically or hormonally and then regret it or try to reverse it. Because that is a group.
I sounded 10 years ago. So, they were able to do it that way. And it was one.
And now I would argue, once again, this is probably not going to go over well if you're a soy boy liberal. No. I would argue that if you're, now I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I follow the logic down the chain here, and it checks out in my walnut-sized brain. If you're gender dysphoric, right, you believe that you're in the wrong body, and you want to switch your genders, you want to change your equipment. The ways in which that is possible, which is hormone therapy or surgery, are so world-bending and life-changing that whatever dysphoria you had is now going to be viewed under the context that you're obliterating any sense of normalcy in the first place. So how are you going to operate from a sound, just mind when all the chemicals in your body are working literal magic on you, and you underwent insane, complex surgeries that are borderline barbaric because it's not as clean as just shing. No, the chop and tuck is brutal in many aspects, and you have to stay on top of the area forever because it's not entirely fleshed out. Some would call it mutilation. So my question is, it's almost worse in my mind, or at least it could be worse, to make these decisions that then alter your chemistry and biology even more, which just, it's like throwing a grenade into the situation.
Wonderful. And they could stay in the group as long as they wanted. I saw some people every week for 10 years. And that's how well I knew them. They tended to get better after about a year, but they just like being in the group. What I found is that less than 2% of my patients went on for any physical, hormonal, or surgical things. Less than 2%. Because once they'd realised that this solution they had wasn't really a solution, but it was a proxy solution for something
It's like changing the engine in a car when the door was broken. That's a very interesting analogy.
else underlying which they were escaping from, and once they dealt with that, then everything was okay. Remember to flash the cards at me if I'm going on too long.
Minutes, yeah.
2 minutes, okay, fine. What time do 2 minutes? So there's a definite link with autism, trauma, internalized homophobia. Like I said, I'm the only psychiatrist in psychotherapy who offered this for gender.
Now, this guy worked for the NHS, which is in the UK, and you could probably imagine that his nuanced ideas are not going over well on that side of the pond. But you'll have people that can't even have these discussions or debates without labeling you transphobic, a TERF, trans-exclusionary, radical, feminist, whatever. Like, to me, it's fascinating to talk about. I want to throw my hat into the marketplace of ideas and unpack complex things. And if you guys have made it this far in the video, the stream, then I appreciate you. Because a lot of people just tune out when they think it's just going to be a bunch of jokes and, like, nonsense. But I guess that's what we call filtering out the soys.
Neurosis that comes from it. Depression and anxiety. And things of that nature. So that's what it is.
Call it the great filtering with a PH.
I wish I was wrong. Maybe I am wrong. If you disagree, tell me in the comments. Look, I'm a young, impressionable guy. You could change my mind.
As a neuroscientist, transition surgery, hormone therapy for children, is absolutely insane. You're putting the gasoline into the oil compartment. I mean, we have actual neuroscientists in chat over here. Not many on YouTube, Twitch, and Kick have our elite academic magi in chat.
When sexual immorality is rampant, something like pornography, people become governed by their desires, their lustful desires, and they become very predictable.
As a random guy, men can't become women. Simple as.
And they entrench themselves in these sexual identities. And this is true of all identities, but something about the nature of these sexual identities, people will defend them with their lives. It's especially touchy. And I suppose something like that has happened.
That is true. If you look at transgenderism, furries, even feet guys, they're like, it's not weird. No, it's totally normal. It's totally natural. I would imagine even PDF files seek solace and comfort in each other's camaraderie and community. It is odd how tribalistic these things become.
Maybe I'm wrong. No, I'm wrong. I might flip the script on them. Could be a vibe. You know, I wonder if I'd be pretty. Would I be pretty? Would I be bad? I don't know. I feel like I might be pretty bad. I feel like I might be pretty bad, little shawty. I've been recording too long, huh? Give me that.
Well, hopefully you learned something today. Class is dismissed.